In my family, we used to say that money flows like water from a cracked jug, unless you learn to seal the cracks in your soul first. That's the kind of wisdom passed down at our Shabbat table, where the candles flickered and stories unfolded like threads in a worn tapestry. My name is Haim, and I'm 75 years old now, sitting here in my small apartment in Haifa, Israel, where the sea whispers secrets to the shore. I was born right here, but my roots dig deep into the soil of Odessa, in the Russian Federation. My parents fled there as young dreamers, carrying the weight of pogroms and promises in their hearts. They raised me in a home that wasn't rich in silver, but overflowing with words from the Torah, tales of survival that my father would share while sipping tea from chipped glasses. He was a tailor, mending clothes for strangers, but what he couldn't mend was the quiet ache in our house during those hard years after the war. I remember watching him count every kopeck, his hands trembling not from cold, but from a fear that gnawed deeper than hunger. It broke something in me young, seeing how prosperity seemed to slip away like sand through fingers, no matter how tightly he gripped. That pain shaped me, turned me into more than a storyteller. I'm a witness to the human soul, a quiet explorer of its hidden corners, carrying both the warmth of our traditions and the scars of what I've seen. Life taught me that the real poverty isn't in empty pockets, it's in the shadows we ignore. What I uncovered about why Jews never truly go poor, it shook me to my bones, like thunder rolling over the hills of Jerusalem. It's not the simple lessons from books or the rabbis' gentle nods at synagogue. No, this is a raw truth, one that's as healing as it is harsh, hidden in the folds of our history for centuries. I believed, like so many, that hard work and faith alone built empires from dust. But digging into family lore, speaking with elders who'd walked through fire, I found something that upended it all. Take the Levys, a family much like mine, ordinary folks from a little town outside New York, where the streets buzz with the hum of immigrant dreams. David Levy was a baker, rising before dawn to knead dough that fed the neighborhood. His wife, Sarah, kept the home with a steady hand, teaching their children the blessings over bread. They seemed solid, the kind of people who'd weather any storm. Then came the crash, a fire in the bakery, debts piling like snow in winter, everything lost overnight. Whispers spread. The Levys were done, just another tale of faded fortune. But years later, there they were, not just surviving, but thriving in ways no one predicted. A new shop, community ties that bloomed like unexpected flowers, wealth that flowed back quietly. What secret did they hold? It wasn't luck or cunning. It was something woven into the fabric of Jewish life, a psychological key that turns poverty into a teacher, not a tyrant. And it starts with facing what we all bury deep. Have you ever paused in the quiet of your own life and wondered why the rules we learn don't always hold? Why does kindness sometimes leave you drained, like pouring from an empty cup? Or why grinding away at a job feels like chasing wind? If those questions echo in your nights, if you're tired of surface advice that promises gold but delivers dust, then pull up a chair. This story is for you, like we're sharing tea on a worn porch. I know that weariness. I felt it as a boy in Odessa, when my uncle Aaron would visit from the old country. He was the saver of the family, stashing coins under floorboards, quoting the Torah about the ant preparing for winter. "Haim, my boy," he'd say, eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Wealth is in patience, in denying the now for the later." And for a time, it worked. He built a modest life, a house that stood while others crumbled. But then I saw the twist, the shadow beneath. Aaron grew old alone, his savings untouched, his heart as barren as a desert stone. No family gathered at his table, no laughter warmed his nights. He'd saved money, but lost the joy that makes it mean something. That memory stuck with me, a first crack in the simple truths. What if the path to never going poor isn't hoarding, but something riskier, something that demands you look inward? The Levys faced that very riddle after their loss. David staring at the ashes, Sarah whispering prayers not for revenge, but for understanding. And in that ordinary ruin, a mystery unfolded, one that would reveal why our people endure, generation after generation. But what if the real enemy, the one that keeps poverty chained to your door, sits right at your own table, without a sword, but with a sharper blade of silence? Let me take you deeper now, like turning the pages of an old family ledger, where the numbers tell one story, but the margins whisper another. In our traditions, we start with the straightforward truths, the ones etched in the Torah, simple as lighting the Shabbat candles to welcome the light into darkness. The first key I learned, the surface rule that seems to hold everything together, is this: save diligently, as Joseph did in Egypt, storing grain against the famine. It's the foundation of not going poor, the quiet discipline that builds walls against the storm. Let me tell you about David, a man from Brooklyn in the shadow of the Great Depression. He was a tailor like my own father, with hands calloused from years at the needle. David woke each dawn, not to chase dreams, but to gather what little he earned, every penny tucked into a jar, hidden behind the flour sacks in his shop. "Waste not, want not," he'd mutter, echoing the wisdom of our elders, who survived exiles by clinging to what they had. No fancy investments, no risks that could shatter a home. He scrimped on bread for his family, skipped the new coat even in winter's bite, all while quoting proverbs about the wise man who foresees trouble. And it worked in the way these things do at first. By the time the war ended, David's jar overflowed. He bought a bigger shop, sent his sons to learn trades, even helped neighbors in quiet ways. The community called him blessed, a living example of how frugality turns scarcity into security. Jews like David, they said, never go poor because they honor the slow drip of patience, like water carving a path through stone. It felt solid, this rule, a shield passed down at every minyan, where men gather to pray and share nods of approval for the steady path. But here's where the first shadow creeps in, the doubt that gnaws like a quiet termite. David's savings couldn't buy him a single night of real peace. His heart grew heavier than any stone in the heart, burdened by the what-ifs that haunted his sleep. He died with a full jar, but an empty table, no grandchildren laughing, no stories shared over challah. What good is wealth if it isolates you, turns your home into a fortress against the very warmth that makes life worth living? I beg you, don't ignore this. Because in the Levy family story, that same rule played out differently. After the fire, David Levy tried it, hoarding what scraps remained, cutting corners until his wife Sarah's eyes dulled with worry. It kept them afloat, barely, but the cracks widened, and something unspoken festered beneath. That leads to the second key, the one that deepens the first, adding a paradox, like the twist in a braided rope. True provision isn't just saving, it's giving freely, as in tzedakah, the quiet charity that invites abundance back to your door, like inviting Elijah to the Seder table. It's the balance, hold on tight, but release with an open hand, trusting the flow of the world as God intended. Think of Sarah, not the one in the Levy home, but another I knew, a widow in Haifa, whose husband left her with debts taller than the city walls. She could have locked away her last shekels, surviving on crusts and resentment. Instead, every Friday, she'd set aside a portion, no matter how small, and slip it to the needy at the market, whispering a blessing from the Torah about the hand that gives never empties. "It's not loss," she'd say, her voice steady as the call to prayer. "It's planting seeds in soil you can't see." At first it seemed foolish. Neighbors shook their heads, calling her soft-hearted to a fault. But watch this. Doors opened. A stranger repaid her kindness with work in his shop, then another with a place to live. Her home filled not just with coins, but with people, friends who shared meals, children who brought laughter. Sarah's life bloomed, her poverty transforming into a quiet wealth that rippled outward. It's the Jewish way, woven into our holidays, where we give to remember our own chains in Egypt. Hold too tight, and the river dries. Give wisely, and it refills. Yet even this held a troubling undercurrent for the Levies, a first real twist in their enigma. Their giving after the fire wasn't pure. It masked a darker secret, echoes of a buried family grudge that poisoned the gift, turning tzedakah into a bandage over a wound that wouldn't heal. Poverty begins not in the purse, but in an empty soul, and theirs was starting to echo hollow. Now we push further to the third key, where the surface cracks open to reveal the psychological depths, the why behind the what, more vital than any action. It's not in saving or giving alone, but in the motive that drives your hand. Is it from true faith, a light like the near-to-mid eternal flame, or from fear, a chain disguised as caution? Let me share about Isaac, a merchant from my old neighborhood in Odessa before the move, whose shop sold spices that scented the air like promises. Isaac was known for his generosity, donating to the synagogue, feeding the poor at his own table, always with a smile that seemed genuine. "Charity saves the soul," he'd quote from the Talmud, and on the surface, it did. His business grew, customers flocked, drawn by his reputation. But I watched closer, over years of shared teas, and saw the shadow. Isaac's giving stemmed from guilt, a deep rot from a sibling rivalry long past. He'd outshone his brother in their father's eyes, leaving Isaac haunted by unspoken blame. Every coin he gave was atonement, not joy. Every meal shared, a way to silence the voice in his head. It worked for a while, building his wealth like layers of phyllo dough. But the fear twisted inward, eroding trust. He suspected betrayal in every face, hoarded secrets that isolated him. In the end, his fortune stood, but his family fractured. His children drifted, seeing through the mask. Isaac learned too late that motives unchecked become the real thief, stealing the peace that true prosperity demands. What if your greatest virtue is your deepest fear? That's the question our traditions urge us to face, not in judgment, but in quiet reflection, like reciting Modeh Ani each morning to start the day honest. And here's the revelation that struck me hardest in the Levy tale. No one saw it coming. The patriarch, old David himself, confessed one evening over matzah and wine that he'd sabotaged his own brother years ago, not from greed, but from a raw fear of abandonment that clawed at him since childhood. All those years of building, giving, saving, it was laced with that hidden chain and the fire. It was the universe's way of forcing the break. We've journeyed through the surface now, like skimming stones across a still pond, but the ripples demand we dive in, deeper, where the currents pull at your core. Our traditions teach that true understanding comes not in the light of day, but in the quiet wrestling of the night, much like Jacob at the river, grappling until dawn. The fourth key, this hidden law, flips everything on its head. To gain true wealth, you must lose it all first, stripping bare like the prodigal son who returns not broken, but reborn, wiser, his pockets empty, but his spirit full. It's a paradox etched in our history, the exiles that forged resilience, the losses that cleared space for something unbreakable. Let me paint it for you with a story from Tel Aviv during those tense days when shadows of conflict loomed large. There was a family, the Cohens, Isaac the father, a shopkeeper of fine linens, his wife Rachel tending the home with prayers and patience, their two boys dreaming of futures beyond the market stalls. They weren't wealthy but steady, like the olive trees that bend but don't break. Then war's hand struck. Bombs shattered the city, Isaac's shop reduced to rubble overnight, debts crushing like waves on the shore. Everything gone, savings evaporated, home half destroyed, the boy's education paused. Isaac could have cursed the heavens, hoarded the scraps in bitterness, as many did. But instead, he chose the harder path, the one our sages whisper about in Torah study. Total surrender. He gathered what remained, a few bolts of cloth, and gave them away at the relief centers, not for show, but to affirm life amid ruin. "If I cling," he told Rachel over a simple meal of bread and salt, "I drown, let go, and perhaps we float." The community saw his act. Neighbors shared tools. A cousin offered a corner in his warehouse. Slowly, from that void, bonds formed. Isaac started mending clothes for survivors, his hands now weaving not just fabric, but trust. The boys learned trades in the rebuilding, Rachel's quiet strength drawing helpers to their door. Years on, the Cohens didn't just recover, they thrived, their business a hub of the neighborhood, wealth flowing not from cunning, but from the fertile ground of loss. It's the Jewish secret, born of wanderings. Poverty's fire purifies, burning away the dross to reveal gold in relationships, in the unshakable self that emerges. Believe my experience. This law isn't punishment, it's the forge that tempers the soul against endless winters. But that wasn't the bottom of this tale. I dug deeper into the Levy's whispers and found what no one expected. A layer where loss wasn't accident, but the deliberate unraveling of a curse passed down like a flawed heirloom, forcing the family to confront what they'd long buried. That pulls us to the fifth key, an even thornier psychological truth, one that cuts to the bone. The gravest sin isn't the loss itself, but denying your own life to atone for shadows, refusing to live fully, chasing redemption through self-sacrifice that chases away every blessing. It's like carrying a debt that's already paid, letting guilt's rope tighten until you can't breathe, forgetting the Torah's call to choose life, to dance at weddings, even after funerals. As a community elder here in Haifa, I've seen this play out too many times in the eyes of men who fade before their time. Take Aaron, not my uncle, but another, a baker like David Levy, whose ovens once warmed a street in Jerusalem. Aaron's life cracked early. A business? Deal gone sour, blamed on his own sharp tongue and youth, leaving him with a brother estranged and a heart heavy with what-ifs. He could have moved on, rebuilt with the grit our people are known for. But no. Aaron turned inward, sacrificing everything for redemption. He worked endless hours, skimping on his family's joys to pay back what he owed, not in money, but in endless atonement. No vacations, no new clothes for the children, every shekel funneled into gestures that screamed guilt, donations to causes his brother once loved, visits to synagogues far from home. "I must make it right," he'd say, voice cracking like dry earth, quoting psalms about the burdened soul. His wife pleaded, the kids grew distant, but Aaron persisted, denying himself the simple pleasures that knit a life together. The business stagnated, customers sensed the shadow, drifting to warmer hearths. In the end, Aaron sat alone, his atonement complete on paper, but his home echoing empty, wealth slipping away not from fate, but from a refusal to embrace the present. He learned too late that true prosperity demands balance, honoring the past without letting it devour the now. I tell you this from my own seat at too many such tables. When you deny life to chase ghosts, you invite the very poverty you fear. It's a law hidden in our rituals like the Yom Kippur fast that ends in feasting. Afflict, then affirm. And now, the emotional core that hit me like a wave. In my years listening to confessions over tea, one neighbor stands out. Old Rivka's husband, who for decades secretly visited the grave of the man everyone thought was his enemy, the partner he'd lost in a bitter split. Not out of hate, as the rumors flew, but from an animal fear of being alone, a terror rooted in his orphaned youth that made him push people away even as he longed for them. He confessed it to me one Rosh Hashanah, tears mixing with the rain outside, how those visits were his twisted prayer for connection, not closure. When he finally spoke it aloud, forgiving himself and a minion of trusted friends, the chains broke, business partners returned, family healed, and abundance followed like dew after drought. He did it not from love at first, but from that raw fear of isolation transformed into strength. I beg you, don't ignore this. Because for the Levies, this very denial was the hidden chain. Their fire, a mercy that demanded they stop atoning for shadows and start living. As the pieces fall into place, like the final threads in a tallit fringed with purpose, everything sharpens into a picture I never saw coming. Not in my wildest reflections over Torah scrolls or quiet walks by the sea. We've walked through saving's discipline, giving's flow, motive's hidden weight, loss's purifying fire, and the sin of self-denial. Each key a step deeper, each story a mirror to the soul. Then it hit me, clear as the call of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. It's not about money, not kindness, not even guilt's heavy load. It was simpler and scarier all at once. Jews never truly go poor because we face our inner shadows head-on, turning the fear that festers into fuel that lights the way forward. That ancient resilience, born of wanderings and whispers at the Seder table, isn't magic or scheme. It's a psychological pact with life itself, where acknowledging the darkness invites the dawn. For the Levies, this truth unfolded in the ashes of their bakery. But the real unraveling started generations back. Old David's confession wasn't the end. It was the key. That sabotage of his brother, driven by abandonment's terror, had rippled down like a flaw in the family line, manifesting in bad deals, unspoken tensions at holidays, a subtle poverty that clung no matter how hard they worked. The fire? Not punishment, but mercy. A forced purge, stripping the generational resentment bare. Sarah, with her steady faith, gathered the family one Shabbat after the loss, not to mourn, but to speak the unsaid. They lit candles, shared stories long buried, the brother's side of the tale, the fears that birthed the rift, and in that circle, like a minion of the heart, forgiveness bloomed. No grand gestures, just honest words, echoing the Torah's command to love your neighbor as yourself, starting inward. From there, the shift. David rebuilt not alone, but with his estranged kin, weaving a network that turned neighbors into partners. Their new shop thrived on trust earned, wealth returning not as revenge on fate, but as harmony restored. I tell you, in my years witnessing such turns, this is the secret kept silent for centuries. Prosperity endures when shadows are named, not ignored. The enemy without a sword sits at your table, feeding on silence. Name it, and the feast becomes yours. And because I've walked this path myself, carrying my father's aches into my own quiet nights, I want to leave you with something practical, a simple ritual to ease the weight of what we've uncovered, drawn from our traditions without the weight of dogma. Call it the shadow talk, a practice to face those inner cracks gently, turning them from burdens to bridges. Start on a Friday evening as the sun dips low, marking Shabbat's welcome. Find a quiet corner in your home, perhaps by a window where the light fades softly, and light a single candle, the kind we use to honor the week's end. Its flame, a reminder that even small light pierces the greatest dark. Sit with a notebook, no rush, just breathe as if reciting Modeh Ani, grateful for the day. Then write one hidden fear about money or loss that's tugged at you, maybe the dread of not enough or the guilt from a choice long past. Keep it honest, like a confession to a trusted rabbi, but private at first. What shadow sits at my table? Let the words flow, no judgment, just release, like the Kaparot ritual where we swing and let go. If it feels right, take it further the next day. Share it anonymously with a small circle, perhaps friends over coffee, or even in a journal passed to a loved one. No debates, just listening, mirroring the support our communities offer in tough times. Inspired by Torah reflections on self-examination, this isn't about fixing overnight. It's a weekly drip, like water wearing stone, gradually loosening the chains. I've guided families through it here in Haifa, watching fears transform. One man, haunted by his father's failures, found clarity after 3 Sabbaths, opening doors to opportunities he'd blocked. Do this with kindness to yourself. If it's too raw, pause and pray for strength. It's the Jewish way, not fleeing the Yetzer Hara, the inclination to stray, but engaging it so it serves rather than rules. In time, you'll feel the shift. Pockets may not overflow instantly, but the soul's wealth grows, drawing the rest naturally. Believe me, this ritual has been my anchor. It can be yours, a quiet rebellion against the poverty of pretense. Now, as the candle gutters low and the night deepens, like the hush after Yom Kippur's final prayer, it's time to unveil the heart of it all, the great secret our people have guarded, not in vaults of gold, but in the quiet chambers of the soul, passed down through whispers at the Passover table and reflections in the mirror of the law. This isn't a strategy, no formula etched in stone tablets for quick riches. It's a profound psychological law, woven into the fabric of Jewish endurance. Poverty clings like a shadow when you hide from your fears, letting them fester unseen. But we thrive by embracing the Yetzer Hara, that inner inclination toward the dark, the doubts, the guilts, the raw urges, as a teacher, not a tormentor. Transform it through honest gaze, and it becomes resilient strength, a magnet for provision that flows from cleared paths and open hearts. Think of it as the alchemy of exile. Our ancestors didn't conquer lands with swords alone, but by wrestling angels in the night, turning inner turmoil into the unyielding spirit that rebuilds after every fall. For the Levies, this was the unspoken code, their generational shadow. That fear of abandonment wasn't slain in battle, but invited to the table, examined under the light of shared stories. David didn't erase his past, he integrated it, letting the Yetzer Hara reveal where resentment had blocked abundance. Sarah's prayers shifted from plea to partnership with the self, and in that embrace, opportunities arose. Not magically, but naturally, as trust rebuilt bridges long burned. I've seen it in my own life, here in Haifa, where my father's trembling hands taught me to face his unspoken losses. By naming them in my journals, by sharing at elder gatherings, the weight lifted and doors I'd never noticed swung wide. This law explains the centuries. Jews never go poor because we don't suppress the storm. We harness it, letting fear forge the wisdom that sustains. Believe my experience. It's not about perfection, but persistence in the Igis wrestle, turning the enemy within into an ally that ensures the river never runs dry. So where does that leave us, you and I, sitting here in the glow of what we've uncovered? With hope, real and rooted, like the eternal flame that never flickers out. Don't run from your demons, those shadows of doubt or regret, that whisper of scarcity. Stare them down. Accept your full self, the light and the dark intertwined, as in the tree of life. Watch how abundance follows, as it has for generations, not as reward, but as the natural fruit of a soul unburdened. In my 75 years, from Odessa's echoes to Israel's shores, I've learned this catharsis isn't easy. It stings like the first cold sea dip. But on the other side, a quiet wealth, relationships that endure, choices that align, prosperity that serves rather than rules. The Levies found it. You can too. Carry this forward, not as a heavy yoke, but a gentle lantern, illuminating the path our traditions have always lit. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone wrestling their own shadows. They might need the light just as you did. In the comments, tell me which twist hit you hardest. The confession, the fire, or something deeper? Subscribe to unravel more soul-deep mysteries with me, week by week. Take care of yourselves. Remember, real wealth is the courage to be honest with your soul, even when it hurts.